So we come down to the time when Muhammad is passed from the scene. And
I got a
we have
question
crisis.
before you move on.
Yes.
Did he have any formal education? And where did he get his Jewish history?
Well, one can only speculate, but I suspect a lot of it had to do with the trading and the caravans. There were Jews that he would have known in Mecca. There were Jews that he would have interacted with. So, that came from his practical life experience. One of the things in terms of education, and this is a little bit hard for us to sort out, because the claim early on in sort of the veneration of the uniqueness of Muhammad is you will find a lot of Islamic writers who will make a big deal out of the fact that he's unschooled and unlettered. And yet he has produced the most perfect example of the flowering of Arabic literature the world has ever seen. There is no comparison. And so that is seen by many of those writers as an example that one would point at to say, yes, this was divinely inspired. This wasn't Muhammad making this stuff up. This was God speaking through him. And so it's hard to know how much of that is an after-the-fact interpretation. How much education did he really have? Was he able to read and write? He could probably keep accounts pretty well. But the Quran was not written down by him in his lifetime. There were people who had transcribed some of the things that he had said, but it was really the next generation before it was put in the version that has been passed down ever since, because people had remembered it, heard it, passed it along orally, and so the tradition says, no, he was unlettered. He was not a writer. He was not an educated person. Other questions? Yes?
The impression I got from you about his revelations, thank God. From what I've read, and this is my opinion of him, is that as a head of the caravans, like you mentioned, he goes way up into areas, Palestine, Syria, and what have you, and he has a lot of contact with Jews and Christians. Okay, and he took all of these, from what I can read, these problems that the Jews had with the Almighty and not following His word. There were times when the Almighty took and had the Jews overthrown and things of that nature. But He still accepted the basic part of what we call the Old Testament. And he knew enough about Christianity that with the Trinity, he just says, oh, they're going back to the old stuff. There's only one God, and to me, what it sounds like is that he listened to all kinds of people, and I think anybody will realize that you talk about religion and beliefs with one person, and even in the same denomination, you talk about somebody else and you get different ideas. And I think that was my opinion. He got different ideas about Christianity and about Judaism. And from what I've read in the Quran, he got that all mixed up. He's referring, and of course he's like you say, he's talking. He's merely preaching to some group. And he makes references that I found it hard to read it as far as the Bible. Because the Bible, you got a sequence and you follow that. And with the Quran, he's just going over here and there and whatever. But a lot of it, and he makes references to the book.
Well, and that's certainly true in terms of reading the Quran. I think most everybody would agree, it's not the kind of thing that is tightly organized by subject matter and heading. Each surah, each chapter kind of has a life of its own, and that's because of the way the revelation was given to him. We're going to talk about this some more when we get a little bit more into what is Islam, what do Muslims believe and practice, and so on and so forth. But one of the things that's fundamental to the take that he brought to the people of his time was there have been a lot of prophets. God has spoken from the beginning through prophets who have said, this is the way you are to follow. And in every generation, those prophets have been abused, they've been reviled, they've been persecuted. People may give lip service to them, but pretty soon, even the best of what the prophets have had to teach gets twisted and perverted. And the perspective that the Quran has on Jesus, for instance, would include Jesus in that list of prophets, men ordained of God to come and deliver a message.